to our third dinner discussion. It's kind of part of our series of the practitioners panel, which we do kind of in combination with our podcast. Um, and then also we do like these Sunday workshops as well that tends to kind of expand on the dinner discussions and expand on the podcast as well. So the topic, well, the guest for today is Nico, and he's a sex and relationship specialist, and the topic focuses on nonviolent communication. So that's the idea of the dinner discussions are that it's quite free flowing, and it's the direction that it can go is really relative to the kinds of conversation and what everybody's kind of interested in talking about. Just go around the table really quick. We got a couple people that are a little late, but um, it's Bali, so maybe by the time we finish the introductions, they'll probably show up.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably that.
So we'll start with Nico. Yeah.
Well, I'm Nico, and I help high-profile entrepreneurs have sensational sex and make more money. That's a big thing. Uh, and I got interested in relationship sexuality, well, because I was pretty challenged myself. I'm pretty disagreeable, and so nonviolent communication for me was very, very hard. And I'm still learning. Because you're gonna see it's a pretty simple process, but very hard to do. But let's talk about it later.
Hey, I'm Johnson. This is my third time here. I co-own this place with Ian, and I just want to keep learning and expanding, and so I'm always happy to learn from people who are more knowledgeable. I'm glad that all of you guys are here.
Hi, I'm Anastasia, and this is my first dinner-and-discussion, and I hope I can catch up with the topic. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leonie. I'm from London, but I live in Bali, and it's also my first dinner discussion, and I just thought it sounded very interesting. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Angelo. I am here not just to support Nico, but he's also been coaching me with other stuff. Met him because started coaching me with Muay Thai, and he started coaching me through what he discussed. It's hard for me to put into words, but after our first intro session, like, he just blew my mind away with his knowledge, and I haven't touched into this facet of today's discussion topic, so I'm also here to learn more about that and find out about his expertise in this field.
Hi, I'm Mariana. This is my third time at dinner and discussion. So far, I've really enjoyed them. There's always so much to learn, so I think it's great to just share your opinions and values and views in any topic. So it's been really interesting, and looking forward to tonight.
I'm Ashley. This is my third dinner and discussion as well, and yeah, it's always great to learn from people that have expertise in different fields and just get more knowledge and have good discussion.
Although there's like the camera and just for the audio stuff, like you don't have to actually talk into the camera. It's more of just kind of like people's ability that aren't able to actually join the conversation to be able to be kind of a part of it outside of this. It's the same idea with like the podcast, and generally it's everything is based on this idea of like human optimization, right? So like whatever interests you might have, whether it be purely like health or fitness or let's say relationships, we want to become better at it and grow as humans. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and start, and you go start us off with some basic I don't know, topics or whatever.
Yeah, so the first thing I will do is I will ask a question. Who has a tendency to, when there's a disagreement, to stay stuck in conflict, to get into conflict? And could you give me an example of how that looks in your situation? Or for friends of you, if you are not comfortable talking about yourself.
Is it a matter of like if we have a disagreement
Yeah,
and I'm
suppose-
just very fixated on my point, or I just am very defensive?
Well, it depends. Like a situation where you have conflicts and well, both or one of the two parties they don't get their needs met. Or I will make it more simple. Is remember a fight. How did that go? What was being said? How did that escalate? Like most of us, I know, I'm like that. If somebody raised their voice, it's going. My sympathetic nervous system gets activated, fight or flight takes over, and what happens? My conscious mind and all the theory that I know is out of the window. Well, that was for the longest time. And so, what happens is then I have like an entire library of how to do it, but then the fight happens. And then a bunch of thoughts make me very angry, make them angry, and we don't hear ourselves anymore. So, have you an example of that?
Me and my dad.
Okay?
We have very different opinions and values, so it's difficult to communicate. We always end up arguing with each other, and then one of us says something hurtful, and then we just don't talk for a while. So yeah, that's a difficult one, especially because I'm not like that in my personal relationships and in friendships. I think it's for me personally it's difficult because I've grown a lot as a person and developed a lot in the way I deal with the people around me, but because my relationship with my dad, it's always been there and it's always been like that. I found it really difficult to move on from the way it's always been with him specifically.
Yeah, I have a kind of opposite sides, you know. I'm a very calm person. I'm never fighting. I'm never fighting even with my boyfriends, whatever. I mean, just not. So I'm fighting the first time and last time. That's it. So, but the thing is that people who surround me, you know, some of them, and people who are really like my mom, you know, like some of my close friends, they're kind of have, how do you say it in English? Have a short temper, yeah. So I can keep that. I mean, I know that this is like I have to excuse and you know whatever something what you read in the Bible or Quran or whatever you read. But you know, I'd like to know how would I mean, yeah, this person has his explosion and we didn't have fight because I didn't keep up, you know. So let's finish here. But still, you know, I'd like to know how to deal with such kind of people when I mean you kind of can realize that. Thank you so much. That you are, you know, you're going to get into a fight, like just like this if you want. But how to cut them off, you know, how to deal with that kind of people.
I would actually like to hear, if it's possible. If I could, I would like to hear everybody.
For me, I'm generally quite like Emma, quite calm. I'm more like a peace seeking. Rarely do I get into arguments. But I know that between myself and my ex-girlfriend, it was very different. She was the only one who really knew how to like push my buttons, and I feel that every time we argued, it made me a lesser person or a worse person. Like I feel like I'm not being a good person after arguing, and it's one of the reasons why we're not together. Is because I decided that being together is toxic for me because I feel that I'm becoming a worse person in life. Right? So for me, the arguments are more like she'll say something that I don't agree, and I'll tell her I don't agree, and I don't think that you know, I think you're being a bit judgmental about this, or I think this is my opinion, and she's very fixated on her point, and she keeps pushing that point, and then I'm like, okay, it's fine. But she gets mad because I don't get mad. And she gets mad because I don't show emotion. Like she gets mad that I don't get happy about something. I don't get sad about something. She's mad that I don't have emotion. She's just mad because I'm very peaceful. Yeah, she wants to get a reaction in that sense. And she, you know, she likes. I guess she thinks that sometimes I'm too nice, and she wants me to be more offensive. Like she wants me to actually tell her to fuck off, or like. You know, so for me, I was like, that's not me. Like, I don't really use that kind of language. I think it's very disrespectful between partners as well. And so for me, that was like, absolutely, this is not a relationship that I can grow in. Right? So for me, it's not violent, but it definitely did make me really angry for her to keep pushing on this.
I would say I'm definitely a conflict avoidant. So I'll do anything to not be in a conflict, like an argument. It just makes me really on edge. but I wasn't always like that. When I was a teenager, I was very feisty, huge arguments with my dad in particular. And then I had a boyfriend who was a pretty unpleasant character, and he would make massive arguments, but I actually would argue back until eventually I walked away from him because it was toxic. So somewhere along the line things changed, and now I'm like, oh. But inside sometimes I want to say a little bit more, and but I just fear that the other person will shout at me.
And do you find that because of that you have several needs that you don't get met?
I'm actually reading a book at the moment all about sort of healing yourself and being whole again, and it talks a lot about different personality types, and I think I'm sort of a rescuer, carer sort of person, so I'm always running to the rescue, and I'm like, yeah, wait, this person is selfish, not kind, not caring. And I did it just recently again to a guy who was not very nice. And but I walked away quicker than I've ever walked away. So I think I'm improving, but I just you think you see a pattern, and then suddenly you realise you've fallen back in the same pattern. You're like, how? It just keeps coming back at me. It's really annoying.
Recurring pattern. You
Yeah,
keep
I go for hedonistic narcissists. I think they're just amazing. Such an idiot.
You were just very bad to yourself. It's okay. We all are. Somebody else?
Yeah. So I would say that this is pretty interesting because listening to you guys saying you're conflict avoidant, initial reaction is that I'm that way too. But then if you think about it, well, at least for myself, how do I best put this? I think a lot of people will say that they're conflict avoidant when they're really not. And I'm not accusing you guys of that at all, because I know that there are times where I have created conflict in my relationships, even though generally I like to think that I'm not conflict avoidant, because what you think of yourself may be different than how other people perceive you. And the most relevant thing I can think of was my latest ex-girlfriend, because it's just the freshest. So my initial reaction to that was, well, first of all, the surface level, when you asked your question, is how do you deal with this conflict? And looking back, whenever we get into an argument, I would always want to work it out because of what you guys said, right? I'm conflict avoidant. I would always try and talk through it. And then I had never dealt with this before, but she was the type that would close up and just not express anything because she just didn't know what to say or how to express herself. Whereas me, I just want to work through it so that we can move on, right? But then looking back on it, there are times too where I created conflict because I learned that rather than just biting my tongue and dealing with it, it's better to be honest with what I'm thinking and to let it out there so that it just doesn't eat me up inside and grow over time. And I think that that's my honesty sometimes is probably where some of the conflict has started. It's very situationally dependent on how you deal with it. I like to think that overall, in general, I want to move past it. This is for relationships, but there's times where people just piss me off so much that I just want to keep playing devil's advocate just to fucking stick the knife in them, you know? Maybe part of it could be ego trying to prove my point and trying to appear superior. I don't know. I'm not afraid to admit that. Or part of it could be because they actually are truly wrong, and I know that my way is probably the best. I'm just, the example I'm thinking of is my business partner who I work with, right? Sometimes I just hammer away my point because I know it's more beneficial to us in the long run. So I guess it just depends from person to person, because when I have conflicts with my parents too, that's the way I approach that is going to be very different than with my relationships or with my friendships or my business relationships.
Whereas Ash?
I don't think that I have necessarily a specific example, but I think that like an interesting point on saying like are you conflict avoidant or not? And I think certainly in the past, and maybe to a point nowadays as well, I don't think I'm necessarily conflict avoidant, but I think I'm conflict delaying. I think there's like an apex where my confidence and my anger cross at the point where I will create conflict. I feel like often, yeah, thank you. I feel like there are times where I actually feel like conflict would potentially be beneficial to me, or not necessarily conflict, well, yeah, conflict to a degree. And I find that I can't necessarily attack a situation head on because I lack the confidence to do so. So what I actually allow it to do is escalate either in my head or in situationally until it gets to a point where I suppose my anger is greater than my confidence, so I can act on it.
So
And
it's,
I feel
it's
like
similar
I
to
kind
like,
of follow that sort of pattern.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, no.
it kind of is going off of sort of what I said, right, where it sometimes eats you up inside until you have to just let it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I could have a with a I don't know, let's say with a work colleague or with something like that, where I could have a situation that I need to address, but I feel too anxious or unconfident to actually address it, and yeah, it'll sort of eat me up enough that I get to a point where I'm like, okay, now I'm really pissed about this. And now, but what I've actually done is I've escalated it with that person having no perspective of it escalating. And then now I go for it, and they're like, where did that come from? Like, whereas had I approached it early, it could have been a conversation instead of a confrontation. So I think something I do.
So Brian, we're just sharing just like an experience or something in our life with regards to conflict. So like for me, I would say when I was younger, I definitely had a lot of, I mean, my brother and my sister, or no, my sister and my dad are very, very stubborn. And so they would always want to just, whenever they got in an argument with each other, they would never back down from each other. And growing up, like I was always kind of the mediator between the two. And because otherwise they would just kill each other. But then like later, I don't know, for some reason, I always kind of served as like a natural mediator between a lot of my friends. I don't really know how it kind of worked out that way. I just, in like high school, middle school, I just kind of knew like almost everybody in the school. And so it just, I don't know, I end up always being kind of like the person kind of helping out the relationships. But when I would be in a situation where like I'm trying to figure out my relationship stuff, like I would notice that sometimes if I get worked up, my emotional state would affect the way that I was like perceiving the situation, or what would come out of my mouth was maybe more in relation to my emotional state at that point as opposed to what I actually wanted to say. So as as we all do, grow older and ideally grow wiser, I've come to realize through a lot of these kind of situations that, well, there's a lot of times where people are having a fight about something when they're not actually having a fight about the same exact thing. So they're arguing about something, and they can go through a 2-hour argument, and then at the end of it, they're like, we're not even talking about the same issue, So yeah, I've come to get to a point now where like, if I do feel like that my emotional state is starting to trump the situation, then those are times to pull myself back and maybe save the discussion for later. But also too is clarification of what we're actually talking about. Obviously with sometimes a man having a conversation with a woman, it can be, you can't just be having an argument about two completely different things, depending on what. Well, like I always give the example of like the wife, telling the husband to pick up something from the grocery store and he doesn't pick it up. He thinks the arguments, they argue. He thinks the argument's about not picking up the groceries, but maybe the argument is really about some other
You're not paying attention.
him not paying attention.
Exactly. Set the
Yeah.
line.
So I think it's really important. Maybe at the earlier in the process, you know, like figure out what it is you're actually arguing about or what the problem is before. Ideally, you'll in your emotion explode to a point where you start saying or doing things that you probably will end up regretting.
Probably a few months ago that I just realized that some of the arguments is not about what I believe it is, and it's the women. Like, this is just me and my wife, 21 years, and after reading The Way of the Superior Man, it's the when I'm like, men are problem solvers, so I'm like want to solve a problem, and after I read that, I'm like, oh my god, they just want to freaking talk, and it's like just it's the dance. And right when I listened to that, I'm like, I'm gonna just dance with her. And I started getting it, and now our relationship is like way better than it used to be. So that's just a thing to where my wife and I, before things would escalate and I wouldn't understand about, I guess, the way that women work. Not that I understand it fully or even close to it, but you know, yeah, probably that's where I'd start with.
So, what do you think violent communication is? I call it fuck you communication. Because that's what you say inside on certain moments when shit gets you. You almost spit it out. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. So, what it is, according to the theory that I work with, is all built on judgments. Because from a very young age, we learn that when we make a mistake, we get punished. And we don't make a mistake, we get rewarded. So we get motivated by punishment and by rewards all the time. And that becomes our normal way of communicating too. So if you want to have something from somebody else, if you have a certain need that wants to be fulfilled, we tend to start to push them to do it, to ask demands. Now, have you ever had that in a relationship or in a business relationship or even with your parents or with your children, that people start to, or asking demands from you? Well, a demand is asking for an action or for something, often very general. I want you to give me more attention. And if you don't do it, you get punished, or get shamed, or you get judged for being a bad person.
So there's like a consequence of.
Yes. So the difference between a request and a judgment, we go in there a bit later, is that with the request and a demand, is that demand entails a consequence. That if the person does not do what you ask them to do, shit just got real. It's time to fight. It's time to judge it. It's time, yes, to make things smelly, you know. So, how do you handle that when somebody's asking demands? What does that do in your body? What does that do in your reaction? If you have somebody that you might love deeply, that's very important to you, that you start asking demands.
I guess it depends on the situation, but it's making sure that the focus is on the topic as its own. Because, so for the example that I'm thinking, like with my ex-girlfriend, her demand is like, why are you not like this? Why are you like this? Da da da. You know, like, I think, you know, like she'll threaten the relationship by like, oh, you know, just break up then. Why don't you just break up then? You know. So it's very consequential. But there's many times that I just remind her, like, is the issue really this issue that you're talking about, or is it that you actually want to break up? Like, what is the root of the issue? You know, like if the issue is actually the issue that you're talking about, then there's no need to threaten the relationship in a sense. For me, that's just the example that I can think of. And normally, it's just
But does that do with you when that happens?
well, I think my natural response is to be quite defensive. Because for me, it's in that situation, it's quite disrespectful to threaten a relationship or your relationship in that sense. So I mean, I'll get angry about it, but I think I always try to get to the root cause of the problem. It's like, what is the actual issue that we're discussing? Because I always feel that I kind of go off topic very quickly. Yeah, but this is just very specific to this, like, I'm dealing with my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's so specific. I actually think this happens a lot. So there's a problem, emotions get up, like you said, like you fight, a fight gets over, and like the old patterns, what they perhaps saw from their parents or from an old boyfriend or whatever, like something they learned in their past got installed, and it just happens. And then very often afterwards, we all are like, I had that many times, that I said what? And then they start to explain what I said and how I said, and then I start to realize, wow, I am an asshole. It's bad.
Yeah. Well, I think my reaction is not like, I don't get angry. I mean, I get defensive, and I guess I get a bit upset that you threaten the relationship. But again, it's more of like, well, what's the actual issue, you know? So I don't think that my reaction is like defensive, that I become angry. It's just defensive, and because I'm a little bit hurt from your reaction.
Sometimes it's the people who you cannot break up with, you know? Like in my case, it's my mom. So she's a very demanding person. She's very, like bossy. She's a very difficult person. And when I was younger, of course, it was a problem. But when I became older, I just, she's very demanding still now. But I'm a good girl, okay? I figure out how to make it clear for her and for me that I realize that you manipulate me, and I go for your manipulations because I'm your daughter and I love you and I want to please you. So it's kind of, so she knows what she's doing and I know what she's doing, and you understand, it's kind of a family thing. But when it's somebody you can broke up with, like boyfriends, it's the same. It's so disgusting when you realize that someone is manipulating you. That's it's disrespect. It's these a lot of things. I'm sorry, I don't know English that well.
And do you give in then, or do you resist?
I have a very kind of calm character, and I'm very easy to get under pressure, So I know that I'm very easy to like hypnosis or whatever something. So I just not stuck into in my country it's a lot of gypsies, so you can get hypnosis just on the street. Like anyways, so I just try to pick the people, because I know that I'm gonna be under the influence. So I just try to pick the right people that I will like their influence. So that's it. That's why as soon as I realize that the person is manipulating me in the wrong way, so I'm just out. So
when we try to influence others by using force, because that's what it is, when we try to steer, manipulate people by rewards and by punishments, then we can get what we want sometimes, but not really. Because I want you guys to ask you two questions. When you demand something from somebody else, it's first, what do you want? What need do we want to be fulfilled? And the second, why do I want my partner or my conversation partner to do that? So even if somebody complies to your demand, very often you're gonna feel like shit because you're forcing them. They don't do it out of their own will. They don't do it from an intrinsic motivation. No, they do it because you have forced them. And I don't know about you, but if I do that, and I have to be honest, I do that quite frequently, it feels bad because I'm forcing them to do things that that is not what they want. Have you ever done that? Try to influence others with rewards and with punishments. So now not your partner, but you. How? And really try to think about it because we don't see ourselves like that. But very often we do manipulate because that's how we taught from a very young age.
Like, well, I mean, where I am now, like, I would take. Sometimes people don't necessarily know how to communicate things, you know, to its full extent, or to in a way that allows people to not get defensive or not get experience some negative feelings towards what is being demanded of them. I think if you, as an individual, like when you're taking in someone's demands, then if you feel like the demand itself is theoretically reasonable, you could reformulate it into as an opportunity to make improvements in certain parts of your life. You know, so for me, like, this is kind of what I do more now than I've ever done is that I do my best to not force situations or force things on people as much as I provide as much as I can an opportunity for them to make improvements in where I think they can make improvements, and whether they decide to take those opportunities or not I leave it up to them to do it. But I also take it in the other way, is that sometimes people are not good at providing opportunities. They say, like, you should do this because I think this is best for you, and so they're almost demanding it. Whereas if they were just to change the context of what they're saying, it could just become an opportunity for you to become a better person. So depending on what it is they're exactly wanting out of the situation, you can take someone's demands and just reframe it as an opportunity to make improvements. And then if you wanted to as well, probably a good thing would be to kind of reframe their demand into that opportunity and actually show them how they could have re-explained it. But yeah, I think, the only thing at the end of the day is we can control is ourselves. So maybe trying to reformulate how people make demands and such would be a good approach to have.
Well, that's beautiful. You just explained a very central thing. The most central aspect of nonviolent communication is that Rosenberg, the guy that invented it, that came up with it, he uses it everywhere, into relationships, but even like when countries have been in war for years, he manages them to get to solutions through this technique. It's very powerful. And why? It goes from the premise that all people, well, at least not the psychopaths and narcissists, but like most people want to make life better for themselves and other people. The problem is if you have a conflict of needs. If you have a conflict of needs, and what often happens too is that when we feel in scarcity, when we feel, for example, we grew up and we didn't get enough attention from our parents, for example, then a little lack of attention can become a giant problem for us. But for our partner, it's nothing, because they are securely attached, or they like their personal space. So a lot of us, for sure, if a lot of us think like, but what about me? If our needs are being met, and for sure, if you are conflict avoidant, you're gonna shove things under the carpet until the carpet is so big that you fall over it flat on your face.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens with the conflict avoidance.
Yeah. So the problem is that if you give in with conflict, if you submit, as it were, first of all, it's gonna create some resentment. Second of all, your partner will not be fully fulfilled because they realize that they forced you. And third of all, your needs are not being met. So if one partner's needs is always getting met, that is very skewed, very toxic, very bad. But a lot of people, because they don't want to have conflict, when they're together with a partner that's a bit dominant, like I am, no, they shut up because they're afraid. And it's normal. We don't want conflict. It's evolutionary, not adaptive to love conflict. If you love conflict, well, the people that love conflict, most of them are dead. You know, yeah, they die out, or they live in South Europe, but there it's different. There is a way to get the juices flowing. But that's another story. That's for another night. So violent communication is words like should, must, have to. That are very violent things because you're trying to force something from the other person. You're not giving them any chance to decide for themselves. And when you do that, you take away something very important. Their self-reliance. People, we all have a need for connection. But sadly enough, a lot of us give their need of connection gets priority over our need to be self-reliant, to decide what I'm going to do. Because we are afraid that otherwise we'll end up alone. Now, why? Because we learn that very often to express our needs will create conflict. And that, of course, is scary and not fun. But it doesn't need to be. Of course, if you are going to tell our partner, you never give me attention. You're always away doing yoga and breath work, never giving me any attention. You're always Muay Thaiing. What about me? Or, for example, if you're not very good in communication, you're just a rock. Judgments, you know? Judgments, what does that do? It creates resistance. And when you can create resistance, two things will happen. Like I said, or you submit, and then your needs are not being met. Or you do like I do, you fight. And then it's so painful, and nobody's needs get met then. Because when you push, the other one is gonna push back. It's like, it's normal. Somebody pushes you, you're gonna push back. And that's the name of the game. Or you surrender and you feel like shit and they feel like shit. So now, how can we change this? Because this pattern is not really nice. And how can we handle people that have this pattern, that are very forceful? Well, we have to look to the mechanics of nonviolent communication. The mechanics are actually not that difficult to explain, but very difficult to do. Okay. So the first thing is, instead of a judgment, we're gonna create a clear observation. We have to learn how to observe without an evaluation, and that is not so easy.
But how to tell that you're a piece of shit without telling that you're a piece of shit?
Oh, but that's judgment.
Yeah, why
Well,
would
but
you
if
say
you-
that it's probably your value that you're inputting on someone? If you think that they're a piece of shit, you're not liking something that they are doing. So it's then your value that they are.
Into the conflict, it's a priori, it makes that your judgment is judgment. So it's you cannot not make judgmental because otherwise you're not gonna get into the conflict. You know what I mean? So if I start to fight with you, it means I think that you are wrong in something.
Yes, exactly.
So it's already judgmental.
Exactly. So that's the problem. I mean, like, this is a normal thing. We get that inner judgment. But if we listen to the reactivity and we're gonna express that judgment, what happens is that when you're being judged, it's not fun, and you're gonna resist that, or you're gonna submit. But either way, it's an unsatisfying situation. So in the short run, it actually can feel very good to say to somebody, "You're a fucking asshole." Yeah, it can be. I don't know. It can be feel really good. But that's in the short run, the very short run. On the long run, that's unworkable because both of your needs are not being met. And so you keep going, and then you get in this cycle of judgment upon judgment upon judgment, and then it's not a communication anymore. There's judgment. So what happens is, like Mariana said, it is a certain need of yourself that is not being fulfilled. And what happens then? Then we put a judgment upon that. It's an unfulfilled need, it hurts or it's not fun or whatever. But that's our needs. And our thoughts are our. So what we often do is, you made me angry. It's because of you, of what you did. It's not true. What I did was a stimulus, was a trigger. That could have hurt us. That made that our needs were not being fulfilled. But what made us angry was how we talk to each other. So I have a question. If somebody isn't being, like you said, a shithead or something, like, what do they do and what are you saying to yourself after you feel bad?
I just prefer to not, get acquainted with that kind of people. The thing is that the specific of my work is that I'm not working in community, yes. So I'm not working with a lot of people. It's not. I don't have to deal with people that I don't like. So I just don't deal with them. But when it comes to family or people who are coming to work every day from 9 to 5 and working with that kind of people, I would kill myself.
Nico, I'm wondering though, because when you're talking about this and talking about expressing your needs and expressing it creates conflict, I feel like that's very specific to personal relationships, specific or in particular to like romantic relationships or friendships or whatever. But when you're talking about these things, I can't help but relate it to business for some reason. And I'm thinking about certain situations where with how I run my business and I express my needs, like sometimes some of my employees are late in delivering a project, so I tell them, hey, this is what needs to be done. You need to deliver on time because we have other moving parts that are relying on this. And I don't think that, of course it's creating conflict, but I just don't think that it necessarily creates judgment or some of the other things that you were saying, because in this situation it's more of just addressing someone's lack of responsibility, which now that I'm thinking out loud, it is a judgment in itself, but I just don't think that it's it results in sort of a violent communication. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, like you said, it's a judgment. And so it is very logical, you want your thing to be done, and it has to be done. That's the agreement between you two as agreement. So it can be like, listen, our agreement is this, just make more an observation. Your agreement, the project is due in this time, your overtime. This has to happen, because otherwise, because otherwise then you're making a punishment. So in business it's a bit more difficult because and then we're going to talk about when is punishment necessary. Well, you have corrective punishment where you're going to punish somebody, or you have punishment to save a kid. For example, you have a kid, it's eating a candy too much, you slap him. That's corrective punishment. You have a kid that almost runs over the street and you pull him hard. That is saving that part, that thing. So what you're trying to do by doing this punishment, this thing, because you're not even punished him yet, but you're actually trying to save his job. So in that way, it doesn't need to be. So it's pretty subtle, the difference.
It's like context and also pretense, right? Because in this particular scenario, you already have the pretense that there is an agreement on a task being completed within a time period that both parties have agreed on. That's the pretense to it, and then the context is within the workspace, so it's not necessarily it's not like it's not a judgment, certainly emotionally or anything. It's purely a judgment on that pretense and in that context. So it's not. It wouldn't be the same as saying putting a similar thing on a partner and being like, you need to do X, Y, and Z for this relationship to work. It has a completely different type of context, right? So that would be a very like a violent communication.
So what is the pretense then in that situation?
Oh, I don't know in that relationship one, in that example I gave.
think
There isn't necessarily a pretense in that one. There could be where both people could agree that that needs to happen for the relationship to develop, but certainly if it's coming from one partner towards the other versus it being an introspection, I think it's very different. You going, I think I really need to, I don't know, be better at timekeeping for this relationship to work, versus the other person being like, you need to be better at this for this to work. Like that person is then putting a judgment and a violent thing on that other person, and they're in a situation where they feel like now they have to do that thing because of what the partner has said. They aren't given the opportunity, like you said, they haven't been given an opportunity. So they can't go, I would like to take this opportunity to do this thing. They're being told your ultimatum is like the end of a relationship versus either do exactly what I want, irrelevant of your needs, because the ultimatum is that I'll end the relationship. It's not a choice. There's nowhere for someone to go.
So, it's a precious thing. Like I'm very careful with saying you can't enforce in business because, I understand you're running a business, so the numbers have to be better. The things that have to be done have to be done. However, what do you think in the long run will create the most motivation? If you would express, for example, to your worker that I have the need to be highly competent and on time, and time is for me very important. When you, a clear observation, when you don't deliver the agreed task on time, then I feel very bad, and I feel I will lose these clients, which is also bad. Exactly.
Non-violent.
I just took a deep breath, and then you can even express like, this could jeopardize your job, and I don't want that. And then it's not like a threat, but it's just an observation. It is a reality. And it's a very difficult thing because it seems like a threat, but it's not. It's an observation. That will happen. If he doesn't do it in time, the client is gone, he is gone, isn't it? So it's very precious. And the thing is to go to the needs. If you can say, okay, or you can ask him like, what is the reason that this project is not done? Instead of saying, you have to do this now, no, ask them like, okay, we had this agreement, no? Okay, ask him, what is the reason that did not well? Because for some reason you never know. For example, he might have walked into the apartment cheating on them, or you never know. So ask like, is there any need of you that's not being fulfilled? That you don't do the agreed thing. But really try to look to the underlying needs of yourself. You need to be competent, you need to provide high quality, and perhaps unfulfilled needs in that worker, in that employee, because there is a reason that they did not do what they do.
Yeah, that's true. I guess when in this particular example, if I tell an employee he's being late and it's affecting my business, I'm telling it more from my perspective rather than looking at the problem at hand from his shoes and getting to the root of the problem of why he's late and what we can do to be more punctual.
So that's the thing. In the short run, this gives you the idea that will get done, and it might get done, but again, it will create resentment. Because if somebody tells you, you have to do this, it's not fun. It's not fun. You wanna have intrinsic motivation. And for sure, if you wanna create motivation on the long run, then you can look to the needs. Because if you talk about the needs of both of you that being unfulfilled, then you can find solutions that are win-win for both. And yeah, it's a lot of work. And a lot of people say they should just listen. Well, okay. But I believe that if you learn how to communicate with your employees in a way that shows that you respect their needs too, that they will be inspired to make the business thrive more. Because then, when you really care about their needs and express your needs instead of judging them, you're inspiring them to do the same thing. Because again, if he's not a psychopath or a narcissist, we are people. When do we feel the best? Research has shown that time and time again. When we help other people is often the times that we feel the best. When we help others. When we connect with others. So if you as a boss have the big balls to say, hey, I put on my boss cap and I connect with you as a human being. I focus on the relationship between you and me as humans, not as boss employee, but as humans, then you will inspire somebody in a much deeper way.
That's a good point.
On the long run, in the short run, it might not work that fast, but for sure when you work with creatives and with people, the things that you do, then in the long run it will pay off big time, because you will have a much deeper relationship with your employees, which makes a team so much more powerful, so much more dynamic, and so much more in a positive spin. So there is research that has shown that there's like a positivity ratio, and they have found in everything, in relationships, in business. It's very strange. They don't know why, but it works like that. So if you have a ratio of 3 positive experiences to 1 negative, or in relationships 5 to 1, you get in a positive spiral. And for example, you say you're a salesperson, you do 5 sales conversations, you have 3 wins, you start to go up and up and up. You get like a positive cycle. But the reverse is true too. Suppose somebody is having a lot of problems back home. Then the project thinks that they make mistakes, or they procrastinate because they're not sure they can do what you ask them to do. They have a bunch of negative things. If then you say, now you have to do that, it's another negative thing, so you get a negative spiral. So in my eyes, one of the best things to do, and it's very hard, because for me, like I said, I'm very disagreeable, and I'm very passionate. So if somebody says no to me, or if somebody wants to force me, so I have to learn, but that's the second part of what I'm going to talk about a little bit. I had to learn how to ground myself in the moment, how to create a protocol that helps me to stay present in intensity and not in reactivity, but stay present in intensity. That's what often happens. If you push away, and then it explodes, you're reactive. You're not acting like you want to react. They pushed your buttons too much and now you explode. Fuck. I'm not the person that I want to be. But you can avoid that by learning how to express your desires. And when they attack you, you can start to see, okay, what are their feelings? And what is the need that is not being fulfilled that creates those feelings? So you go more digging too. Like very often what people say, like you said, is not the thing that we're fighting about. It's an unfulfilled need. And very often it's for sure in intimate relationships with a woman, is that the man does not pay enough attention. That's pure the way of a superior man. Be present with her. The other way around, like it's like a lot of fights happen around sexuality where a lot of men feel like, yeah, we never have sex anymore. And what a lot of women don't understand is that the way is the way, one of the only ways that a lot of men dare to be intimate, dare to be touched. Normal hugging and holding hands, that, well, you're not a man, you're a pussy. Sex, then it's allowed to be affectionate and to get touched. So there are little misunderstandings, but like if you look at the face value, like, then the woman is like, you want to use me like a sex doll, but they don't hear the underlying need, like, I want to be loved, I want to feel affection. Or the woman, I want to be seen, I want to know that you still see me, still want me, still desire me, instead of preferring to binge watch Netflix, instead of ripping my clothes off and taking me. I mean, it's a bit extreme perhaps, but that's often what happens. We have those superficial conflicts and the underlying needs are not being met. So that's what you can do with nonviolent communication, is okay. But first you need to see when we are being violent. And there are a few things that are signs. If you use the word be, you are this or that or that. That's a nice clear sign that you do that. And that brings me to the next. How we communicate to ourselves is one of the most violent ways of communicating, mostly. That is also why it is so hard to be non-violent to other people. Because how we talk to ourselves very often is extremely violent. If you make a mistake, how do you talk to yourself? That's my question. Now, how do you talk to yourself when you made a mistake?
Very violent.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I talk to myself definitely in ways I wouldn't talk to other people. but it is like if like I can make a trivial or petty mistake, and yeah, I'll talk to myself like I'm a piece of shit. Like literally, like in my head, this monologue can go on of like, yeah, you piece of shit, you waste space, you really fucked that up. Like, look, and like you said, it can go into that spiral. It only takes a couple of thought patterns like that, and that arguably can for a brief period of time affect my identity. I can really identify with how badly I'm talking to myself for doing something that had somebody I cared about made the same mistake. I'd be like, it's alright, like, don't worry about it, like, let's move on, like, what could you do differently? But yeah, I don't necessarily approach myself with the same respect or calmness.
Somebody else, how do you talk to yourself?
I think I'm the same. One of the things that I was doing for a while, and it actually really worked for me, was thinking of a person that I really care about and that I kind of protect, in which case was my sister. She's younger than me and I've always felt very protective towards her. And imagining if it was her on the exact same situation, would I talk to her like that? And the answer would always be no, and sometimes I would actually feel hurt about how I dared to be that disrespectful to myself, and I wouldn't talk to anybody else like that. But I think it's like you said, it's kind of a spiral, and if you allow yourself to listen to that voice, it can become louder and more difficult for you to kind of be like, fuck off, I don't want to hear you. So yeah.
Oh no, this is so terrible what you're saying.
It is
I
true.
mean, yes, you're the most precious thing you have is yourself, actually. And like me, when I'm talking with myself, like you know, whatever bullshit you can read in the inspirational books or articles, like the universe knows better what is for me. It was not a mistake, and you're going the right way, and just you know, whatever, something. But I'm not guilty. You know what I mean? So it's just I don't like to bullshit myself.
It's interesting what you said about the inspirational quotes, right? Because a lot of times people think, hey, I'll look at an inspirational quote or an affirmation, and I'm going to keep repeating it to myself, and I'm going to change myself that way, and this is going to be how it's going to be. But who was I? Oh yeah, there was a psychologist whose book I read, and he said that these sorts of affirmations and inspirational quotes work best for how's the best way of putting it? Okay, so let's say you tell yourself an affirmation that you're going to be more confident, and you're going to like talk to whoever you want and go out and just conquer the world, right? So some like motivation junkies will tell you, okay, I'm a more confident person, whatever, like Tony Robbins style, right? And then this guy said that there was a study that shows that these sorts of affirmations and inspirational quotes only work for the people who are naturally like that. So in this specific case of confidence, it's only the people who are naturally confident that make or benefit the most from telling themselves these affirmations in order for it to work. And most of the time when you're trying to affirm something to yourself that you're not, it's not gonna end up working out. You have to do stuff to really truly believe that you are that way.
That really I really understand what you were saying, because how can I say, like if on my own example, I'm not leader. I'm the one, I'm sorry, I cannot pick the word in English. So I'm not the one who is leading the team. I cannot and I don't want. So I will not do this affirmation for myself because I don't want to be leader. It's not a comfortable field for me, you understand? So the person who is not confident, to talk around with everybody, it should this person should not have to even developing this desire inside himself or yourself, you understand? So it's not like you want it. Like, for example, I cannot make affirmation that I'm black skinned, because I'm not black skinned, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It just does not come to my mind. So the same as when I know that I have to lead the team, so I make a different affirmation. I make a confidence. I can be confident in what I am and what I know. Well, yeah, I have less, maybe I'm not that active, so I don't have the qualities to be a leader, but I have the qualities to be confident. So in what I'm doing and what I'm saying. So that's what I'm doing, affirmation for myself. But I don't do it to become a leader.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you're wasting your time with affirmations. It was just a side note that I thought I'd expand on.
Yeah. I mean, it's just if you feel that you can, but something is missing, then you can develop this quality in yourself. If you know you cannot, it's just wasting of time. I mean, it's like some people, they are laying down on their beds and they're making affirmation that they're making up their, six packs or something. That's ridiculous.
I remember this guy said that the best way to make these affirmations work for you is, okay, let's say this confidence example, right? If you're not confident, you want to be more confident. You shouldn't tell yourself, I'm more confident, I'm more confident, I'm more confident. You have to say something truthful, like, I'm not as confident as I want to be, but I'm working on it. And that's something that your psyche can really accept. Sorry, I didn't mean to get sidetracked or anything.
That's why we do it. That's why it's a conversation, It's nice. I would not say I am not, because then you tell your body that you're not. I would say I am becoming more confident every day. Or I'm working on becoming more confident every day. Keep positive. Now I'm gonna make a little quiz to see if you can see what is violent communication and not. Okay? So I'm just gonna say some words. Okay. You are too generous.
Violent,
Yeah.
Yes.
On the two generals.
Yes.
Could have just said you are judgment.
Yeah. He procrastinates. Why?
Again, it's a judgment on that person.
And
It's their behavior.
how could you rephrase that?
Would you take out the definitive? Because that's a definitive statement, right?
Yeah.
He procrastinates.
Yeah.
End of. Like, you could describe it more as an action. Sometimes that person procrastinates or stuff. Like,
For example,
you have
he
a tendency to.
he only studies for his exam the night before, something like that. Yes, exactly. She won't finish her work.
Don't say that's not violent, it's say not to. But at the same time means that won't. Yeah, it is.
There's no room, so that's violent again.
Yeah.
It's fun because it's an influence about the other's thoughts, process, or intentions. That they're the only ones possible. So what I think, that's the only thing possible. You can say, how would you reframe that then? How would you reformulate, she won't finish her work? Master.
Finished yet.
She may have difficulty finishing her work.
Exactly. That's good. Or I don't think she'll get her work before that. If you don't stop smoking, you will die. You're gonna answer this.
Because it inherently threatens the other person based on their actions.
Well, almost. It is violent. It's violent because it's a confusion of prediction with certainty. So you predict something, and that is true. So you don't give any other possibilities. And how would you reframe? How would you rephrase this?
Irrelevant of if you smoke, you will die.
That's what is that nice.
Everybody will die.
Yeah. You could do that, or you could say like, I fear that if you don't stop smoking, your health will be in danger. In other words, it's about me. If my need is not being fulfilled. For example, you're my friend, I don't want you to die. So how are you gonna explain it? Well, okay, I fear that if you don't stop smoking, your health will be in danger.
Well, isn't that kind of too definitive too? Like, shouldn't you say your health may
No.
be in danger?
I fear.
The biggest point that he's making is every alternative to these is taking it off of that person and bringing it to you. So you're communicating your needs and your feelings, and you're allowing that person the opportunity to then communicate back, as opposed to going, this is the thing that you're doing or that you need to do or you. Instead you're going, I feel, and you've communicated that across, and then they're allowed to then interpret that information and contribute. I think that's like that. That's what I think. That's what I'm picking up on at least just in terms.
Young girls only like to talk.
Oh, that's a statement.
It is judgmental though.
Yeah.
That's violent again.
So again, it is failure to be specific about without reference. So for example, you hear two kids talk. Oh, kids are always talking. No, those kids are talking a lot. That's different. It's an observation. An observation is something that is very, very specific. Now, okay, I can go to a bunch of other examples.
Such easy things to say.
Yes.
But when you make this think about them like that, they can actually putting a lot of judgment or pressure or on the person taking the action. Never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Like Hank is a poor boxer.
Definitely judging.
Yeah, very judgmental.
So how would you say it then?
I think Hank's boxing could improve. I think.
Same thing. I would go to the observation. Hank lost all of his fights. Well,
That sounds quite harsh.
yes. Jim is ugly. Of course, they're all violent. Of course, but I want you to rephrase them. How would you say Jim is ugly in a non-violent way?
Jim could use a haircut.
Personally, related to Jim.
Exactly. Jim looks doesn't appeal to me. Very nice. So it's like adverbs and adjectives that don't signal an evaluation are being made. So you make an evaluation, but you're not very clear about it. It's a description. No, it's not a description. In that word, inherently, it's a judgment. And that's why it's not so easy to do it. Because very subtle ways, we're judging all the time. We are pointing the finger continuously. So, and one thing that I would really try to get out of your system is never, ever, always, frequently or seldom. Over their exaggerations. Even if you feel that is true, that's your interpretation. Then you can say, I feel that you very often, or almost every time we talk, start to get angry and scream at me. Okay. Another thing that is also violent is an inability to clearly express your feelings. Because if you don't express your feelings, so in that way you don't have to say nothing to be violent. If you cut yourself off for connection, or just give like surface level answers, you're actually hurting the person because the person wants connection and you take that away because you heard something that you didn't want. Very subtle, but very violent. Very rejective. Non-verbal. You sometimes don't have to say nothing. Just can be enough. He's talking to you, you're not looking in their eyes.
I think sometimes a silent feeling. Like, it's like you were saying earlier where you want to work through something with the person and they just, whether it's not deliberately or sometimes I think it's done as a manipulation technique, it's just, it can be the worst.
Now, I feel I'm a great lover. Is that kind of
Why? Sounds like.
Putting judgment out there.
well, it is a stamp. You know, so you use feel in a confusing way. As if being a great lover is a feeling. That's not a feeling. You can say I feel confident and can't wait to pin you against the wall and rock your world. That is exactly the same, but without doing it in a confusing way. You feel confident. We often use feel in an ineffective way, in a way that is not what really feeling is. I feel unimportant to my partner. How could you rephrase that?
I don't feel the love.
Same thing.
Say, I would like my partner to pay more attention to me or give more importance to me.
That's beautiful. So yeah, so this is when you use feel in such a way, it's not our feeling, but a reference to how others are evaluating us. So then it really refers to the situation. We think that others are evaluating us, and so we use I feel. In other words, you judge other person judging you. So what you can say, indeed, you can say, for example, I feel hurt when my partner don't give me any attention. And there are very subtle little things, that's why it's so difficult to do. Because it is so ingrained in our language, in the way we communicate, that we are judging others and for sure ourselves, that's the main key, all the time. Things like abandoned, cheated, coerced, pressured, abused, betrayed, manipulated, evaluated, rejected, put down, they all are interpretations of others' evaluation of us. So, one of the key ways to be less violent is be very specific, like you said. Talk, and you too. Like, talk about what it is. Be very specific. You know, instead of I feel sad, say when you don't greet me, I feel rejected. Instead of you are disgusting, which is diagnosis, say I feel disgust in my stomach when I see you flirting with other people. For example, I feel good. It's too general. I feel good because you all are so nice people that have interesting conversations. And people are thinking and want to grow. Well, that is specific. So be more specific in your communication. Jordan Peterson says it too. And he's very eloquent in that. Be precise in what you're going to speak. Think about what you're going to speak. The problem is that when our activation is high, we just puke out the words. And then before we know it, our partner has an entire mask of, discussing things. So what we can do is to think before we speak. Take a pause. And it's like a technique that they use in therapy, in acceptance commitment therapy. They use it with everything. With people who have addictions, with people who are schizophrenic even, and it works very well. It's called throwing out the anchor, and it's a very simple thing. So I want you all to stand up. Shake a bit. So what you're gonna do is and I have a different one. So normally what you do with the dropping your anchor is you push your feet to the floor, you focus on your feet, then you focus on the entire body, so you feel how you're grounded, Then you notice what you feel in your body. You scan your body from your feet to the top, from the top to your feet. And you listen. Smell. Then you start to notice what your emotions are. You start to notice what your thoughts are. And then you're going to connect with how do I want to be? What kind of a person do I want to be? And in that moment, you can choose to act like that person, or you can choose to just do whatever and be reactive. And just a little thing that can take literally 2 seconds work very well. Now I use a different way. I use progressive muscle relaxation when I work with people, where you actually are conditioning your body to relax. So what happens? You got to learn how to feel the difference between tension and relaxation. So when we're fighting or we're getting into that fight zone, we tense up. Our entire body tenses up, heart rate goes up, adrenaline through the roof. So what we do then is we breathe in deeply, we squeeze everything, breathe out, and relax. Now this works just a little bit, but if you do it sequentially from your hands to your shoulders and sequentially over your body, and you do that like 21 times, what will you have done? You have conditioned your body, like you condition a dog, to relax your muscles. Okay, so if you have a fight situation, what will happen? You do that, your muscles relax, but immediately they will tense up again, of course, because you're in fight or flight. However, that little split second of relaxation gives you the space to take a moment before you react and choose how to act. I'm going to do that with you again. Okay? Yeah. So this is a thing that you can always use. Just something happens, and focus on your body, what you feel, what are my thoughts, what kind of person I want to be. Those are the 3 things. What do I feel in my body, my feelings, what are my emotions, what are my thoughts, what behaviors do I want to do in this situation. Okay? So besides that, so that was just in between to know how to handle when you're activate, when you're angry, how to stay calm, how to do this. Because a lot of workshops teach you how to do it, but then when you get angry, you forget everything. Like that. Because that's conscious. This is conscious technique. So you'll have to learn how to reprogram your reactions when somebody attacks you or judges you. by a bunch of techniques, because like this is theoretically perfectly, and you are all smart people, so you'll pick up pretty fast. But there's something about knowing something and then doing it in practice, for sure when emotions run high. That's why most nonviolent communication workshops, I think, suck balls. They understand you, they teach you how to understand it, but they don't teach you how to put from here in here, how to make it a habit. Okay. Now, the next thing about non-violent communication is take responsibility for your feelings. Like I said, others can't make us feel something. We can't be responsible also for other people's feelings. We aren't responsible for their interpretation of our words. What we are responsible for is what we say or do. So we can, when we really focus on that, then we can improve much better our communication. Because if you start to judge yourself, oh, I'm such a fucking asshole, what happens if you're gonna, I have to be better? What will happen is, our mind works in a bit like you have several personalities. And if then, like the good guy, wants to tell the disagreeable guy, you will have to shut the fuck up. Disagreeable guys. It's like that. When you try to force yourself, just the same way as other people try to force you or demand things from you, it is not the way to go. Very often it works a little bit and then you fail. Because there's no enjoyment, there's no real intrinsic motivation. It's a forced thing. You force yourself to do things. So the first thing that we need to learn is to learn how to forgive ourselves. And how can you do that? Well, that's the realization that what we do, even if it is completely seems very illogical, we try to improve our own lives and mostly the lives of others. That's why many people cheat. They want to feel attention or have an amazing sexual sex, but they don't want to hurt their partner, so they shut up and they lie. In the long run, we all know how destructive this can be. But it is a mistake, yeah, perhaps. Opinions differ. I'm not judgmental about that. Everybody should do what they want, really. However, to me, taking responsibility for those feelings is very important. Don't use I feel X because of, no. When that happens, then we have to go to look inside our needs. What need is not being fulfilled? That awakens that. What need is not being fulfilled? And what would I like you to do? So, if your partner complains or judges, ask yourself, what of their needs is not being met? That makes the conversation a total different thing. Instead of just attacking back or becoming defensive, asking yourself, what of their needs is not being met? Yeah? And needs are not like, I need status, I need more cash, I need this. No. Needs is much more basic. First, of course, survival, safety, protection, empathy. I want to feel empathy, honesty, certainty, or clarity, variety, celebration, growth, contribution, play, rest, creativity, love, connection, community or warm support, and autonomy, significance. These are the kind of things that are inspired by our behaviors, by our needs. So, after we express our needs, so first we need to observe what happens in the moment. We got cleaned from the we also, it's not that easy always, because it's so very subtle. Really observe. Think that you have to be able to describe a movie scene to somebody, and they have to be able to see it. It has to be pure observation. Then, okay, then we gonna connect with our own needs. Are they being fulfilled or not? And what feelings does that bring up? Then we're gonna connect with the other person's needs and feelings. What feelings do they have or seem to have, and what needs may be fulfilled or not fulfilled. And then we go to the key part, is then we learn how to ask a request. And what is the difference between a request and a demand?
Say no to a request.
What?
A request gives someone a choice, decisions to make. Whereas a demand doesn't.
Exactly. So the problem is with demands is if we demand, then people feel threatened their autonomy. If you demand from your employee that he has to do this, he must, he feels threatened in his autonomy, so he will do two things: or he will comply, or he will resist. And even if we follow the demand, then we feel like they only did it out of fear, guilt, or shame, and that will, of course, will not improve the relationship. But how? But then what we need to do, we make a request, and a request means is you ask a specific action without a necessary reward or punishment. So exactly, if you do a request and your partner does not do it, says tough shit, that does not mean you have to let go of that request. If that is really what you want, what you need in that moment, it's not because your partner says no that you have to let it go. Sometimes in certain situations it's very necessary to stay strong, stand your ground. Not in an attacking way, but in a way like, listen, for example, I would feel very happy if you could say hello to me, really, when you walk in. Very simple, observable, easy to do. So what often happens when we do demands, it is very general. You have to be more attentive. Yeah. It can be everything. No. Specific requests. The more specific they are, the easier it is to comply. And the more inspiring it is, and you do it in a way, I would love if you would do this, because that will fulfill this need. So it's always referring back to your own feelings, to your own needs, and then what you expect. Or what you ask.
We do this in our relationship when we have when we have different needs or conflicting needs, where I might express a need that I have, or it could be something very simple, something very trivial, like
going to the beach or
like wanting to go to the beach or something, or like being like, I would feel happy if we went to the beach together, and the other person being like, but I would feel happy not going to the beach. Like, I would rather not do that thing. And we have a thing when we have those moments in our relationship where we try and then reflect on, we just use a number system, so like on a 1 to 10, how high up that need is for you. So it could be Mariana saying, like, her needs being feeling happy by going to the beach together as an activity, and that could be a 9 out of 10 for her. Whereas me not wanting to go might only be a 6 out of 10. Like, it doesn't bother me that much going, I just prefer not to. But how much she wants to go kind of outranks it, and like that tends to be how we make decisions if we have a minor conflict like that, like just a difference in interest, where it's like, okay, well, we can meet your needs more by that, because
it's more important
to you than it is important to me to not do it. So we'll go with the person that has more needs for it. So that can be a good approach.
Okay. So expressing your request clearly is, again, let's use positive language, because if you say, I don't want you to do this. People hear that as criticism. Yeah. Be specific again. Talk about concrete actions, and think before you speak. You know, really see that if what you want to say does not hold a judgment, because like you saw, very oftenly used words are judgments in itself, or can be used when you use feel, can be used as judgments about imagined judgments. Now think about mindsets. What mindsets do you think that leads to demand? Because it's so easy to start to demand. Like, what do we think that we have the right to make demands?
I don't think that we have the right to demand, especially considering the partner, like wife or husband or boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, well, we are not in Romeo and Juliet age any longer, so I believe that if you have decided to be with this person, so you can evaluate this person before you step into it. And like for me personally, I can see clearly the advantages and disadvantages of my future partner. Yes, so if I realize that I can deal with that disadvantages, with his flaws or whatever something, then I go for it. If I realize I cannot, that he's on the balances, his advantages weigh less than his disadvantages, I just don't go for it. So it's just, the thing is that you take your partner, the whole thing, with all his bad sides, right? Or you just don't.
So yeah, again, if you talk to yourself and you're talking, my partner should do this, or she's supposed to, or I deserve more attention, or I have the right to more time together, I am right to want this, then in itself you're already putting yourself ready to go to battle. I would like, it would be nice, I prefer. That's us. But how we talk, and for sure against ourselves, these ones are, not very much. We talk like this to ourselves all the time.
I think there's a very easy social difference that you can do through sentence. If, for example, if you had an observation about your partner, instead of being like, you should do this, you can say you could, and then I think in that way it's already saying that you would value that, but without making it an obligation to the person. It's more of a suggestion. If you say you could do this instead of you should do this.
Now, a question: how to express anger non-violently?
Oh, go to the gym, Sarah. I highly advise Sarah. You will forget your injury. Whatever. No, really, sports like boxing. All kind of this things.
Seriously? Boxing?
Yeah.
We've just been more using non-violent communication, right? So instead of being reactive, trying to actually communicate appropriately, saying things like what?
Actually expressing how you feel.
Yeah, like I feel frustrated when, and the specific things, like give it the context, give it the specificity, because surely if you're angry there'll be a cause or something that's making you feel like that, so communicate it. So be like, I feel angry when these things happen, or when you do this, or when like that would be a. But I think also some of the techniques you talked about in making sure that you're not reactive and that you are coming into that conversation or into that space not edged up for a fight already, so that you're not like taking a moment, taking a breath, doing some relaxation, whatever, and going, I feel angry or I feel frustrated when, so that you can actually open that up to being progressive, or to having conversation around it, and actually being to approach the subject instead of it just being outburst.
Thing to do is to divorce the other from causing the anger. Anger makes us point the finger. Anger makes us not taking responsibility for what have happened between us. It's the other person's fault. They did that to me, and they deserve to be punished.
Yeah, very easy to advise is when you're not angry, but when you're angry, you just cannot control yourself. So
That's why
you have to run. That's it. I see only one.
Well, the problem with that is like, I mean, I did the same thing. I was a pro fighter for many years, so that has a reason. But the problem with like training it away is that anger is a gift. Anger is there for a reason. Anger is not a bad emotion. It's an emotion. It's a way of your body that tries to tell you something. That there are needs that are not being met. And so, yes, it might be good to get the sympathetic nervous system a bit down, to calm your body, to actually exhaust your body. But the problem is the cause of that anger is still there. And if you're repressing anger by whatever means, you know, I don't say you do that, but like if people repress anger, it's gonna turn inside. And if you keep repressing anger away, people will get depressed. Really. But it's simple to express. Of course, you have to be able to stay calm. So then, taking a moment to calm down is absolutely understandable and the smart thing to do. I wish I did that in the past much more, but it works. But then we can replace anger, like you said. Instead of saying I'm angry because you did A, you say I'm angry because I'm needing A, and I would like you to do A, B. Instead of saying I'm angry because you did that. Because again, because implies a judgment. So even when you, I mean, like, it's beautiful, you are very deep, much further than many people around communication. But even then, those things slip in. And when you're both angry, that hurts. That feels like a judgment. That feels like pointing the finger, because it is. I feel angry because you did that. No. When you do that, these needs of me are not being fulfilled. And that's why I feel the feeling that I feel. It's a very subtle difference, but it's very essential. Do you have any questions?
May I just say one thing, just my observation, you know, because I'm from Ukraine, and in our culture, it's just, you know, a few years ago I started to get involved with foreign a lot. You know, I've been living in the US, I've been living in Europe, so, you know, I started to learn the other people's minds and, you know, what is used in their society. And it's so interesting that in my culture, we don't have judgmental is not bad. You know, like if I'm looking fat in this dress, my best friend will be the first one to tell me that I'm looking fucking fat. You know, and I will say thank you, because nobody else will dare to tell me this. You know, and like if I think that my boyfriend is a grumpy asshole and he has to work, you know, to control his madness, I will just tell him this. You know, I mean, it's not, people accept it as, you know, we learn how to accept critics, you know, from the others, and not to fight it, but to keep it in mind and to take a point. You understand? So it's just this offensive thing, this judgmental thing, and I'm just trying, you know, sometimes like some people think that I'm rude because it's just not in my, not in my culture, you know, much. So I'm just trying to learn how to not offend people with being judgmental.
Yeah, it's good to be honest, but I think the difference lies with how you deliver it, right? Like your example, oh, you look fat in that dress, you know, that's a little, because I know what you mean, like if you're just blatant and frank and honest like that, it could rub people the wrong way. But I come from like the US where everyone sugarcoats everything. So instead of saying you look fat, well, like an American would say, I think you would look better in another dress, or that dress doesn't really suit you. You know, so
say nothing.
yeah, or say nothing. So it's
Because you
kind of a
choose
fine
to,
line.
you probably have a mirror and you choose to, look like this.
Yeah.
Whatever,
So I guess the underlying question then is, between the two like polar opposites, where would you draw the line? Because like some people say that the American way of sugarcoating things is just too much. It's just too nice, or it's not honest enough.
It's the same in the UK.
I think generally the yeah, but I mean I
Being
think
honest
generally
without being aggressive or judgmental, without putting your personal values across, making an observation is different from you thinking something and thinking that that person should adjust to what you say. If I'm making sense.
yeah, of course. But the thing is that, for me, when somebody blame me or someone else, in being judgmental, for me it means like I'm not allowed to have my personal opinion. Like my personal opinion that your shirt is ugly. I mean, I don't say that you don't have to wear the shirt, but I just think so. That's it. So, you know what I mean? So
it's a different, the way they, I'm like, so when I've been interacting with Russians, Ukrainians and stuff, at first it's like, what the, like, and now I'm so used to it, and I'm like, damn straight, she fucking just tells it like it is. Otherwise, like Americans and stuff, America, it's like, it's sugar-coated and you don't say it. And I was used to be like offended, like, what the fuck is she talking about? To like, man, that's right, just tell it as it is.
We are not forcing people to change. We just express our minds, about something.
It's your culture. It is.
Yeah, it's cultural difference.
It really is. I know.
I don't feel that it's. I just started to realize it by myself. I didn't realize it before because I was thinking that everybody like this. I was thinking it's just normal.
And when people get offended, you're like, what?
Yeah,
what?
and I'm like,
it's your problem.
I'm like, what is that? So yeah, really, I couldn't understand what's going on. Like before I started to dig into it.
Do you find yourself being more like them now? Then?
Yeah. No. I just understand it now. Yeah. But I will say more what's on my mind, but not. I'm more like I'm in tune, and I don't get judgmental on what she said to like somebody else, right? It's, like, wow, how could that person say that? I'm like, I don't know. She's Russian. I just, that's what I say.
But it doesn't affect how you communicate with other people then? Like you haven't picked up any of that?
Probably a little bit here and there, yeah. But I'm not straightforward. I'd be like going, oh, he must be Russian American, I don't know. So, it's kind of like more acceptable to it. Sometimes, I don't know.
I think there's definitely a balance you can find between the two styles. I mean, like if you have your best friend and they're just like every day they're just wearing like the ugliest shirts every single day.
Exactly.
I mean, at some point, like you need to tell them the truth so that they can actually make some improvements on their life. Like, and I always thought about this from like a health perspective. Like when I was younger, I would just say that someone's fat, but I would say it almost in a very judgmental way, as opposed to now, like if I say someone's fat, it's purely from the health perspectives. Like you're overweight, and this is negatively going to affect your health. But I would say maybe where the line is going to be at is like, if you just met somebody, maybe you're not just going to be right away. It's like, oh, I think your shirt sucks.
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They're not walking
Right. But maybe once you build a relationship with them, right, and then you feel like there is something that they're doing. And this is one thing that I did a lot, was like after hanging out with my friends so many times in, like, let's say a party situation, like I would actively ask them, like, how was I behaving the night before, because again, sometimes what we perceive our actions to be are not true. So getting their, like, feedback from them, that I trusted that they would actually give me real feedback, allowed me to make corrections to how I behaved in certain situations. But I think, yeah, like, I'm very thankful for close friends when they say something like, man, you were really being an asshole last night. And I was like, oh man, well, I was, like, I didn't even know. So yeah, I mean, I think but if your friends, if you're doing it from a place where you're really trying to help them as a friend, and then they take it in a way that is very, like, they just think you're attacking them. I mean, part of that too is, like, they might just have, like, a messed up way of, like, understanding,
I think that's
what
where,
you're trying to
that's
say.
where I struggle when you're saying if the other person perceives that you're attacking them, because obviously all of us that are here tonight are probably already doing some work in terms of developing our nonviolent communication and communication in general, and doing self-growth and self-work. I think it's what I really struggle with is when I encounter people that have no awareness or interest in doing any growth in that regards, and then you might be trying your best to be non-violent, and you are not putting any judgments, and you're not even trying to impose any of your values across. But if this person is naturally reactive and naturally in that anger state and so ready to jump on whatever anyone around them say, I find that really difficult to actually observe. I personally find that really difficult. It's like, I've been working in customer service for a really long time, and I sometimes think it's so disrespectful the way that people can just talk to other people, and they kind of, because they are in customer service, they kind of put them down as inferior and talk to them in a really disrespectful way. And I really struggle with seeing people being spoken to like that, and that's what I really struggle. It's like, I kind of want to have a word with that person, but I know it's not my place. But I think it's difficult if you are already trying to improve yourself, and then you encounter someone that is just completely unaware that they are being disrespectful. Yeah.
Cool.
But in a race, you cannot be good for everybody, right? You still have to manage to be yourself, right? So if you will try too much to please everyone, around you, you would probably forget about your own wants and needs, which is for me the most important. Okay, so first of all, I think you have to manage how to feel comfortable with yourself, and then the other people, somehow you attract the people who are your comfort, both ways. You're working out together. So it's just the people that are too difficult to communicate with, they just don't have to be in your close surrounding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You cannot work,
No.
put down your life to be good for everyone.
Okay, Nico, any last thoughts, man?
Sorry?
Well, yeah, in some cases, for sure, when you, for example, in an intimate relationship are long together, and you went through the process and you know each other's needs and you can communicate, then sometimes conflicts can spice things up, but that's the subject of a completely different talk. But the key thing is why. So if you tell your friends, you were an asshole yesterday, my friend, but then he can see, he can feel that it's from a place of love, like, I know you can do better. I know you're not that, you don't want to be that kind of person. It's a different, it's very subtle. The words are the same, even the tone can be the same, but it's just a sub-communication of you wronged me, or I want you to be better. That's a subtle thing. That's very hard to teach. That's a mental state.
Yeah, that's like interpretation is just as important as a piece of communication, right? In that context, like, you know and love and respect and trust your friends, so even if they say it to you very straight and very blunt, you can interpret the meaning behind that information, even if they haven't used non-violent communication and they've just been like, dude, you acted like this. like dude, you're a dick or whatever, because you know them and you trust them, and you can interpret that information as constructive and as something to do with. So sometimes even if somebody else is falling down on the communication front on the other side, your interpretation of that information can have a big impact on that communication still becoming non-violent.
Yeah, so that's the thing, like if you really go to the needs and keep going to the needs, you know, okay, some people are just very, very difficult, but if you keep digging to their needs, their unfulfilled needs, then very often you can make them calm down, because they can feel hurt and they will find out things that they didn't know themselves. So now, yeah, we have to close it down. When was exactly the date?
For your 3-hour
Yeah.
workshop? For the longer workshop, it's July 28th.
28th, yeah.
Yeah, 28th.
So it's a workshop where I teach you the basics of these, where I get you to role plays. It can be sometimes intense. Some people are gonna scream, because that's what we have to emulate. We have to do role playing like you do when you do a pro fighter. You have to prepare like you're doing a fight. People are sitting around you. You have to prepare for a fight. Same things in everything to perform. To a role play. Then I'm also gonna teach you that relaxation technique, and I'm gonna add some breath work too after the breath work, because it's much more powerful. And then I give you a protocol, and we practice the protocol of what happens if your activation is up. So you'll have to take like relaxed sports clothes, because I'm gonna make you do some things that will activate you. And so in that activated state, then you can practice that. And then what happens, because you have an activated state, your brain will remember it much better. So that's for the 3-hour workshop.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming for another dinner and discussion. I hope you can come next week. We have Di Emmanuel coming for some lifestyle goal management topics. So that'll be a cool one. Cool. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.